everyone, I'm just waiting for a couple more people to hop on, hence the awkward silence. So thank you all for coming back to English and coming back to MyTutor. Lovely to see you all again. So last time we were looking at a bit of unseen poetry, we were on the literature side. Today we're going to hop back over to English language. This topic is called Writing to Persuade, but essentially you will be doing that in your paper 2 question 5, hence why I've popped that on the slide. And I'm sort of going to look at the mark scheme and look at how it is useful for you guys and what we can take from it, but don't feel restricted by what I am telling you guys. Just because I'm showing you the AQA syllabus, pretty much everything I'm going to say to you is translatable. And most mark schemes look fairly similar anyway. So don't worry too much about that. So if you guys don't know me before, I'm sure all of you do, and are sick to death of me telling you who I am. My name is Vicki. I did English Language and Linguistics at the University of York, and then I trained as a teacher there last year as well. I've done over 400 lessons on MyTutor, and I've done over 500 lessons overall since September, so it's celebrations and all party cannons out over at my end at the moment. So I thought, because we've looked at persuasive writing before and I've showed you all the different past questions that I had access to on AQA's website, I thought the best thing for you guys to do would be to write a letter. So I have shown you the difference between what a speech and a letter looks like. We looked at, I think, the Minister for Transport one, but we didn't spend time specifically talking about letter writing conventions, how to set it out, and how to do a really good job specifically with letters. So I thought I would have a crack with letters for you, because I think there has only been one letter since the new syllabus began way back a few years ago up until last year. There's only been one letter. So that seems like quite a good one to go for, because it's probably about time it comes round again. So pretty much all of the techniques I'm going to be using today are things that we have already covered, but I'm going to be throwing in a little bit extra today, which I haven't covered with you guys yet. So there is a little bit something different, something new, and I've got a different planning technique for you guys, just to keep things a little bit more fresh. But before I get going, I thought I would do a Kahoot, and I thought I would do the same Kahoot at the beginning and at the end, so we can essentially track your progress. And there is stuff in this quiz which I'm not expecting you to know, but if you do know, then that's great, but I'm going to teach you it as we go along. So, just check the chat. Hi, Santati. Always says hi, thank you. Right, so let me get that up and running. So I'll copy the stuff into the chat for you guys. As always, if you've got any questions, please send them over to me and I will answer them, even if it's not particularly related to this session, as long as it's related to English. We've also got Bola with us, who's going to pop back at the end. She's going to disappear for a little bit. But if you've got any MyTutor related questions, she's the lady to ask. So pop those over if you would like. I'll wait for a couple more of you to hop on. Who have we got? We've got 15 today. That's quite nice. Nice number. So I'll just wait for a couple more of you and then I will kick it off. Right, shall we get going? So, which of the following cannot be used as an adverbial sentence starter? So if you don't know what an adverbial sentence starter is, don't worry, I'm going to go through it with you. So don't panic too much. It's pretty straightforward though. Yeah, so basically adverbials, anything like consequently, therefore, however, firstly, secondly, anything that's an adverb and you basically shift it to the start of the sentence instead of having it sort of somewhere down in the middle where it gets lost a bit, just to make things a little bit more interesting, essentially. These are the sort of things that you guys would probably be using and doing anyway, but just shifting them about and having different sentence starters is more interesting, and the examiners like that. Right, so these are the things that I'm not sure you guys will know. Some of you might have heard of them. So which of these is an example of pathos? I'm being really mean with these today. Right, so students should have free time. So pathos is all to do with emotions, feelings, what you guys sort of want to do, essentially. But I will explain these all to you, so don't worry if you don't know what they are. So what is ethos? Yeah, so ethos is being credible. So having credibility, so that might be you work in a particular industry and you're an expert, that sort of thing. But don't worry, I will talk them through with you guys, and hopefully at the end of the lesson, we'll be banging these out really quickly. So which one of these is an example of credibility, provides credibility? Yep, so having a statistic provides credibility, it's provable. Logos is related to feelings or emotions, true or false? I've been a little bit kinder with this one. False. So pathos is the one to do with feelings or emotions. What is jargon? So this is something I've taught you guys about a little bit. Fabulous. Right, so a group of words with similar meanings is synonyms, group of words with opposite meanings, antonyms. A group of words specific to a particular subject is jargon, so things like, if, for example, with cars, cam belts, indicators, ball joints, all of that sort of stuff. You can tell I'm a mechanic's daughter. And the other one, a group of words that derive from a different language. I think you might have sort of like Latinate. I'm not sure whether there are actual specific terms for those. Anyway, if I recommend a Body Shop product to you and I have previously used said product, am I biased? It's a bit of a theme with this one in the next question. You can tell where all my money goes. Yeah, so I am biased because I've had the opportunity to use the product and decide whether I like it or not. Then I am biased because I've already had that experience, whereas I can't look at it objectively. So my opinion is subjective, basically. It's not provable. I love Lush products. They are brilliant for skincare. What am I alluding to? So this is all about illusion, which is what we looked at a couple of weeks ago. Yes, so the inference, I'm implying that, well, Lush is so great, so why would I bother saying that? Well, because I think you should go buy those products. having a lush bath bomb ready is the answer to everything in my book. Right, which text would you be more likely to see a large amount of polysyllabic words? That should be text, not texts. I apologise, you're only looking for one. So you've got tabloids, classical music lyrics, teenage magazine, academic papers. Yeah, so generally things that are more academic have much longer words. Tabloid newspapers are very chatty, usually rather short words being used, same with teenage magazine. Classical music lyrics, I think it's sort of a nice mix of both, and with classical music, you'll half the time you're not singing in English. Right, how should you start the main body of your letter writing? So this is our shoe-in for today. Yeah, cracking. So introducing the reason as to why you're writing. You might want to potentially, it depends what you're writing about, I think, but say how much you admire a person, which is essentially sort of buttering somebody up, I suppose. But for a formal letter that you're going to be writing for an exam, you need to be saying why you're writing and why it's important. Wow, someone got 9 out of 10. That's epic. Wow. Well done, guys. I'm really impressed with those. I thought they were tricky questions. I thought I was going to catch you out and have very, very low scores with that. Oh, wow, I'm super impressed. Okay, so how are you assessed for paper 2, question 5? So you have 2 assessment objectives. They are the same assessment objectives essentially as paper 1, question 5. So you are being asked to be imaginative, communicate your ideas clearly, so writing so it's clear, coherent and easy to understand, and that it is effective in that you are using your purpose, your audience and your format in a brilliant way. So your purpose, audience and format, it mentions here, so adapting tone, style, register for your path essentially. So things like your register, you will be writing informal, but for example not saying starting a letter with hi, how are you, how are your family been, if you're writing it to someone you've never written to before. Using structural and grammatical features, so that's a little bit of a tricky one. What it means by that is using a range of sentence starters, using a variety of paragraph lengths potentially, using and organising paragraphs well, using a variety of punctuation might help you with those grammatical features as well. Your technical accuracy, so this is your SPAG, your spelling, punctuation and grammar. So trying to use advanced vocabulary and spell it correctly, using correct punctuation, using a variety of punctuation, and make sure that you're sort of writing in the same tense all the way through, those sorts of things essentially. So, lovely, Pranav, thank you for looking that up for me. So I'm going to go through it with you in a little bit more detail and give you a couple of tips as to how to remember them. So looking at, what was I going to say? Looking at I think for you guys, a exam syllabus question mark scheme is really difficult for you guys to understand. So I thought I would translate this into success criteria for you guys. So before you start writing, make sure you've worked out what your path is. Make sure you're using the correct genre conventions for that format. So I'm going to talk you through the genre conventions for letter writing. I'm sure most of you know it anyway, but just in case you don't. Using a variety of language devices, so deforest features. We talked about things like credibility and bias. I'm also going to teach you all about pathos, logos and ethos. And ambitious vocabulary. So I think a really nice thing for you guys to do sort of in terms of revising is spending a little bit of a time on a thesaurus and creating some ambitious vocab word banks for your fiction and your non-fiction. So you've got maybe like 5 words in your back pocket and see if you can get them in. Using a variety of sentence lengths and types, so using complex sentences, compound sentences, simple sentences, all of those if you can. I generally struggle to get compound sentences into mine, but that's me. Make sure you're using clear paragraphs and perhaps use a short paragraph for effect. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Link all of your paragraphs and ideas together effectively and use a range of sentence starters and discourse markers. So discourse marker is a word that indicates that you're changing pace, you're going in a different direction. So saying, I think that body shop products are great. However, they don't promote the same amount of recycling and package reduction as Lush. So, and then you could go on and talk about Lush after that. So the however is your turning point, is your switch for it. Right, so this is the question that I'm going to be looking at with you guys today. So this is a question that came up in a past exam. It might be in the specimen paper actually. Anyway, it is an AQA paper. However, I think it was Write a Broadsheet newspaper about it. So I changed the task, but the quotation is the same. So homework has no value. Some students get it done for them. Some don't do it at all. Students should be relaxing in their free time. Write a letter to the Secretary of State for Education in which you explain your point of view on this statement. So I've just changed it from, I think, write a broadsheet newspaper in which you explain your point of view on this. So what's our purpose, audience and format? So our purpose is to persuade and maybe to inform, explain. Remember, you can have a secondary purpose. It's very rare that you will only ever have one purpose, but usually in the paper 2, question 5, you're going to be writing to persuade and argue. Our audience is the Secretary of State for Education, and our format is writing a letter. It's always going to be formal in the exam, and then you've got 40 marks overall, which is a quarter of your entire English language GCSE. So you've got 24 marks for content and organisation, so that's the AO5, and then you've got 16 for the AO6, so spelling, punctuation and grammar. So it's vital that you make sure that you're leaving time to proofread. Right, so this is a little planning tool which I really like using. So this is what I call my little bubble sheet. So with this, I use it similar to a spider diagram, essentially, really. However, what I would do is, I'm hoping that I've had problems with my graphic tablet this week, but I'm hoping it's going to think about working. It is fabulous. Right, so what I would do is I would come up with some main points, as in, okay, so in each of these bubbles. So, for example, children need free time. So that would be point number 1. Homework isn't marked or collected, so that's another big problem. Then what else do you guys would think be a problem? So I'm going for children. I'm going to go sort of slightly down the middle with this one, just because I think going sort of one way or the other is quite a tricky one with homework, because I think there's a lot of, I'm on the fence about it as a teacher. So is there anything which you think, oh, that is such a big issue? Students' free time, yeah, do work in school. They may get stressed with more. Yeah, so I suppose, and this is a thing that one of the teachers I worked with last year said to me, is home is a sanctuary, which basically meant, Vicki, don't take home a load of books and do all your marking and all your work at home, which I really liked, or at least if you do have a specific space for where you do it. And working from home is really difficult. I'm sure most of you guys will know, you've probably got parents who it's an adjustment working from home. So having a particular space where you are when you do work is really important. And then when you're away from that space, when I'm away from my desk, I'm not working. I only sit here to work. And then once I go away from this space, I don't do any work, which is a difficult rhythm to get in. Anxiety, yes, so potential mental health difficulties going on. I like that. Well, I don't like that, obviously, you know what I mean. Potential mental health issues. Okay, so these are my 4 big ideas. So I've got my 4 big ideas and they are in the big circle. I'm going to change colour just so it's a little bit more clear. So children need free time. Okay, so why do children need free time? So I suppose what we could say is a school-life balance, or if you're an adult, and I use that term loosely for myself, a work-life balance. So that's one idea that could back up that point. We could say children need free time to spend time with family. We could talk about the positive effects of that, issues that potentially go on at home. I suppose one of the big things is sort of spending time with family, particularly grandparents, I suppose, because, well, it's individual for each person, but my grandparents were quite old when I was at school. And 2 of them I didn't have past 18, so having time to spend with them at an age when you're at school is really vital. Obviously other people might be different and your grandparents might be a lot younger than mine, but mine were quite old. Right, school life balance, spending time with family. What was the other thing I was going to say? So exercise and maybe working out, gym stuff, and then just friendship groups as well. So nourishing all of those things. So all of those could come under the heading of giving reasons why children need free time. Right, homework isn't marked or collected. What are the main issues with that? Well, if it's not collected, what is the point of doing it? So, well, when I say no point, you might get something out of it occasionally, but I think if you don't get feedback on it, then I'm like, why have you done it? It used to really annoy me when I was at school that I do homework and it was never collected in, because it suggests that it's not valued. Now, in terms of marking, so I'm going to say if marked, students have the ability to improve. Students have targets, which is a really positive thing. So I suppose what we're saying here is that, yeah, homework is good, but there needs to be value, and that's really important. So not setting work for the sake of it. You might have a school policy which says you should get 1 piece of homework every 2 weeks from English. And then sometimes then all the English teachers have to go off and do that. And sometimes you end up setting things and thinking, is this really worth it? Could they be doing something that's better, that works well? Because sometimes the stuff you're teaching in class doesn't translate particularly well to homework. So sometimes should we leave it down to teacher discretion? So there's that. So I suppose these 2 at the bottom, we could probably sort of link together. So home being a sanctuary. So I suppose being able to execute work-life balance, or school-life balance rather, but you know what I mean. Potential mental health issues. So that's going to have a negative impact on education. It could create a negative association with school. So there's loads of ideas that can potentially come underneath the bubbles of those types that we've given there. So we've got absolutely loads of stuff that we could potentially argue for. Now, with this, obviously you can't do this in an exam because, you know, you're not going to be able to walk in with the sheet and write it down quickly. However, what you can do is use one of these devices, but structure it. I mean, it's how much time do you want to spend on your planning, really. Don't spend time making it look pretty. But you could sort of have, say, write your topic in there, and then have, right, okay, home as sanctuary. So that's going to be one of my main points. And then have a load of ideas coming off it like that. So that's a simpler way of doing it, but I think sort of having a bubble sheet like that is really exciting, and works really nicely for you guys planning if I actually had you in a classroom. So coming up with something similar to that, I think, is really useful. The one thing I would say about bullet points, and now I've like battered you over the head with you must plan. With bullet points, it's difficult to sometimes get an order. So you might write things down. So say I've written those down in the order that they've been written in. And then I think, well, perhaps actually mental health issues here's the most important one, and that's the one I want to kick off with, and then working out how everything else is going to slot in. So with your bullet points, I can't remember whether I was a spider diagrammer or a bullet pointer when I was doing my exams. But if you are doing bullet points, sort of decide on the order you're doing them in and write like a number next to them. So you've got some sort of numerical order before you start going and run out of steam and then think, oh my goodness, I should have put that there. And then you've got a puzzle, and then you've got loads of little asterisks all over your exam paper, and it gets messy. I was one of those people, so learn from my mistakes. Right, so ethos, pathos, and logos. So this is really interesting. This is something that one of my heads of departments taught me about last year. I'd heard of it, but I hadn't utilised it in the classroom, and I think it's really helpful for you guys for paper 2s. So ethos then. So ethos is all about credibility. So why should you be listening? Why should you be listened to? So in terms of credibility with homework, obviously you guys are students, so you're going to be writing it as a student. So you can write about personal experiences here. So as you can see, I've got this little pie chart. So we've got intelligence, trustworthiness, and morals. So we could also apply sort of common sense here as well. So there's I've seen a lot of memes, and I'm sure they are still around. I just don't see them anymore because I'm not at school, where you sort of told you have to have 8 hours sleep, then you're at school for however many hours, and then you've got to do 1 or 2 hours of homework, and then you've got to do this, that, and the next thing. You've got to eat, you've got to have time to wash and dress, you've got to have time to do an hour exercise, and it's more than 24 hours in a day. So you could apply common sense to say that is just not possible for me to do all of that. So therefore something has to give. That something could be homework. Pathos. So this is appealing to emotions. So with the ethos, this is the one I haven't quite worked out how to remember. But pathos is all about emotions. So if you think of pathos as empathy or sympathy, both of those are relating to somebody's emotions. So what you can do is link personal experiences to your audience, which is what I'm going to do in mine. What else have we got there? Emotions, prejudice, motivations. So I suppose motivations, you could say why it is important. You could potentially say, throw out maybe a case study for that. And make it emotive, get some emotive language in there. And then with logos think of as logic. So evidence, data, universal truths, so things which are rock solid and have been proven. So for example, now obviously you don't get like a fact sheet in the exam, whereas if I was getting you to do this in the classroom, I might give you a load of facts. So you need to make your facts and statistics up, but make sure you make them believable. So don't say something like 100% of students all said that they never wanted to do homework ever again, because there's probably one student out there who does. So don't make it really big. So something like 50% of marked work, let's say, or 50% of improvement when marked. So when your work is marked, you could say, you could give a case study, you could use the same case study, but you could talk about sort of perhaps your own school and their rules for homework. You know, do you have a particular system for if you don't do your homework? Do teachers adhere to that homework policy? If so, why do they do it well? How do they do it well? So it is logical to your argument. Right. So in terms of letter writing conventions, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, already know this. So you've got your sender's address and date over on the right hand side. You can put the recipient's address above dear and then whoever. If you know the name, so I'm going for the Secretary of State for Education, that would be a yours sincerely, because I know who I'm writing to. If I was using to whom it may concern or dear sir or madam, I would use yours faithfully. So you start off with an introductory statement as to why you are writing. You then have the main body of the text persuading the reader to believe your point of view and take action. And then this is something that I saw, I think it might have been on a TikTok of here's how you should write like a paper 2 question 5, and I loved it. And it was sort of essentially drop the mic. So leave something that is like proper clanging at the end, which is really hammer it in, just something that's quite simple and is a lot smaller than the rest of your text. So something which is punchy, something which is poignant, something which is exciting, or something which sums up your argument in a few words. Right, someone is talking to me. What is a case study? Right, bear with me, Raya. So, case study. A case study is... Oh, how do I put that into words? So a case study is essentially an experiment. So for example, if I went into a school and I read their homework policy and it said that for core subjects, you should get 1 piece of homework every week. And for options and humanities and everything else which isn't a core subject, you should be given a piece of homework every fortnight. So that is a homework policy. Then I could go round and see whether each teacher in each subject is setting that homework as they've been instructed by the administration and by the headmaster. I then can collect that data and say, for example, in this school, core students at core subjects actually have it every fortnight, whereas it should be every week, whereas everything else is working fine. Then I could take that further and say, right, okay, so I've got my evidence. Now I'm going to see who's taking the time to collect the homework in, who's marking it and who's giving it back. Is that piece of homework meaningful for that student? And then I could present facts and statistics on that. Right. Okay, so children need free time to experience outdoors, yet if it is not marked, it is a waste of time and you won't learn from your mistakes or improve. The teachers will not appreciate you do the homework. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with you 100%. You are right, it should be lowercase for sincerely or faithfully. I've had a bit of a moment there, well spotted. So obviously yours is a capital because it starts the sentence, well spotted. Okie doke, so how are we doing for time? So I've written this prior to the session. So what I'm going to do instead of sort of, initially I did want to model it for you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out any features that I use, any pathos, logos or ethos. So I've got a completely made up address, today's date, and then I've got dear, so always start with dear rather than to. or anything like hi, please don't write hi, because it's a formal letter, and make sure you get a comma at the end of whoever you're writing it to or to whom it may concern. Right, I am writing to you to implore you to consider the purposes and benefits of setting homework within our British schooling system. So right off the bat, I've told him why I'm writing, and I've already got in some direct address. So we've got a little bit there. As students, we are taught throughout our education about having a school life balance. Why then do our teachers inhibit us from creating and sustaining that balance by flooding us with unnecessary homework? So I've got my rhetorical question in there, and it's relatively emotive. Now, if we pop over back to our pathos, ethos, logos, so we could already say that this has an edge of credibility because I'm writing this as a student who has experienced these problems. Throughout my schooling career, I have been a model student participating in a number of extracurricular activities, as well as lending my spare time to fundraising for the school. So again, we've got some ethos there in that this person is saying they are a model student, they are to be trusted, and therefore their opinion is worthy. I personally value the time that I have, and I'm happy to give back to my school and community. So there we're already sort of playing a little bit on feelings as to saying, yeah, you know what, I'm a good person and I'm more than happy to do stuff, but let's be reasonable here. Right, did someone pop something in a question? What is OA? Sorry, it's DA, direct address. So just saving me from writing it all out. Where have we got to? However, so that's a discourse marker. However, it's an adverbial. Is homework something which enriches our time away from school? So we've got another rhetorical question in there, and I follow it with a case study. This is all very much pathos going on here. So imagine you spent 2 hours creating a beautiful piece of work asked for by your boss. So I've got direct address. So I'm playing on his emotions and the sorts of things that he would be experiencing in his day-to-day life. When you turn up to that cabinet meeting, not only are you incredibly pleased with the care you have poured into your work, but you are also excited to share your prowess and understanding. So I've got loads of advanced vocab going on there. It's incredibly descriptive and it's painting a picture. So I suppose in a sense we've got some imagery going on there. The meeting drags on and on and on. So there I've got a different type of sentence just to shift things up a little bit. As the Prime Minister stands up and thanks you all for coming, you realise that not only has he forgotten that you have completed an important assignment, but has also deemed it not important enough to remember retrieving the work. So this is really vital because this is essentially a parallel for homework and teacher-student relationships. Hence why it's so good at giving pathos and playing on emotions. Where have we got to? This is something which happens continually throughout schools. So I've got a short sentence in there, snapping it back to why I'm writing it, make sure that he knows why this is relevant to my argument. There are many teachers who set homework because their schools instruct them to, regardless of whether they think that this homework would be beneficial for our education. Sadly, it is a tick box exercise. So I've got some advanced punctuation in there. I'm using a semicolon, and I'm basically saying I'm using my ethos and pathos together to say, why can't we allow teachers to do it on a case-by-case basis to make sure that when they do give homework that it's meaningful, rather than thinking, oh, it's Friday, I've got to set homework today. Right, so I've got a really chunky paragraph here, quite a short one to start off with, big chunky one, then they sort of stay at a similar length from there on in. So sort of getting him on side, essentially. I'm making it important and easy for him to understand in a real life situation. I am sure you are aware of the crippling amount of work teachers have mounted upon their desks. So again, I've gone for a long list. I'm using semicolons here to show that off as well. And I've started it off with a colon because I'm doing a list. The constant mock exams, form filling, marking of work, planning of lessons, going to meetings which aren't particularly fruitful. The list could go on. So I've used a dash there, so I've really shown off in that paragraph. That paragraph is to show off my punctuation. So here, we are starting to use logos. We're using facts. All of these things are things that teachers have to deal with, along with a load of other things to balance. By setting as homework, we are shoveling even more coal to the fire of teachers' workloads. So here we've got a little metaphor to demonstrate what the problem is. It's very obvious. Surely we must therefore trust each individual teacher to set pieces of homework only when it is necessary and beneficial. So here I'm starting to go down the line. So I've started off by saying, you know, homework can be really pointless if we don't hand it in, but I'm now starting to say homework can be helpful, but teachers need to make that judgment and not be told every Friday you set homework, which is linking to that logos of logic, essentially. Of course, so I'm starting with something slightly different here. I'm using a discourse marker, which we've got consistency between those two paragraphs. I'm not suggesting that we throw the concept of homework in the bin. I've also put an exclamation mark there to show off another piece of punctuation. Research shows, so here's where my logos really comes in. Here are my hard-hitting facts and statistics. That homework that is meaningful to a child's development and is marked and returned but positively affects a child's ability in the subject, but also their ability to achieve. So now I'm saying, yeah, homework is a good thing, but we need to make sure that everyone is being responsible with the homework that's being set, and making sure that it has been given worthy and valuable time for both the teacher and the student, so everyone gets something out of it. This research therefore implies that homework which is never collected or is left on the teacher's desk unmarked is completely futile. So that's a very straight synopsis of what that research shows and therefore implies. The other pressing concern faced with homework is that unfortunately there are parents out there who did a little more than help. So basically when I was writing this, I got that far and realised, oh, I haven't mentioned anything about students getting the work done for them. And I'd been mainly focused on you should be relaxing. So hence why I've sort of changed tack a little bit here. I'm sure you know what I'm referring to here. We need to spend time educating parents about how to approach assisting a child with their homework and to avoid doing it for them. So essentially here, this is, again, logos in that we know that teachers do that. It's provable. There are surveys out there where parents have said, yeah, I've done my kids' homework for them. Therefore, we can prove that. And with the logos, there is a suggested solution, which is the really advanced stuff here. This could be done in a relatively efficient way by producing a small booklet for parents of helpful and straightforward teaching techniques for them to utilise behind closed doors. So essentially, I'm saying the suggested solution isn't time consuming, and that's what you want. The last thing that teachers need is you're making an argument for teachers have too much work here, or at least you point that out. You then need to make sure that one of the solutions you're giving isn't even more homework and more work for those teachers. So saying that it's relatively efficient is bringing down that level of work. So it's not going to be a 100-page booklet. It's going to, be maybe a pamphlet, maybe 5 pages, that sort of thing. Where we got to. This also gives us the opportunity to subtly present parents with facts and statistics promoting a child-led homework session. So here again, I'm referring to logos, and it is a very clever way of using logos to tell parents not to do children's homework without saying don't do, implying it, alluding to it. And then my little mic drop, although I think I could have done this better, if homework is to continue, it should be valued, marked and built upon. So I've got a triplet in there at the end, and I'm making it important. It's a very quick summing up of everything that I put in there, and then over on the other side I've got yours sincerely, Vicky. So, and again, I've spelled it with a capital. I don't know why I do it. It's such a silly mistake to make. Right, so there's a lot going on in there. But what I'm essentially saying to you guys is think a little bit more outside the box. Some of these things with ethos, pathos and logos, you would already be doing anyway, particularly with logos, because DeForest, fact, statistics, straightforward, emotive language, pathos. Ethos is the trickier one, which doesn't automatically come into DeForest. So getting your head around those is a really good idea. Right, how are we doing for time? So I'll quickly tell you about mistakes made by students, and then we'll have a go at that Kahoot again. And I'll show you a resource. So, mistakes made by students. So make sure you read the question carefully. So with this, I've seen some people who've argued to the person they're writing for, saying, you have said this, and they're referring to the quotation you're given, and they haven't said that. You are writing them to argue for or against that, but not in response to. So that's a big downfall with that one. Try to consider the other side of the argument. So I've talked a little bit about both in mine. If you can talk about the other side of the argument, acknowledge the positives, and then pick a hole in that positive in some way, that's really clever stuff. So that's something to consider if you're going for those higher grades. But make sure when you are considering that other side of the argument that you make sure that it is very clear to the examiner that you are swapping to the other side of the argument, and then when you come back that it is obvious, because if it gets muddled then you're losing marks for content and organisation. And then use language devices which are appropriate for the audience. So I've used rhetorical questions in mine, I've used direct address, but I haven't started with a rhetorical question because that's not really how you format a letter. Emotive language with letters I think can be a little bit, but don't go overboard because you're throwing it directly at one person rather than a wider audience. What else have we got on there that perhaps anecdotes? So I've used an anecdote. I've mentioned personal experience, but I've said it in quite a professional way with this one. Whereas if you were doing this as a speech for your school, that anecdote would be a lot more personal, and it would be like, do you remember that time that, you know, we did that really lovely project and then, you know, nothing was taken in and we were all really disappointed. You know, the tone changes a little bit, so just be aware of that. Right, okay, I will whack the Kahoot back on then. See how we do this time. So I'll pop it in the chat for you guys as well. If you've got any questions, now is the time. Whilst you're doing that, I'll just get up that resource. Oh no, where is it? It's the one I want. Right. Okay, let's get cracking. Which of the following cannot be used as an adverbial sentence starter? Hoping for full marks on this one, guys. Fabulous. Yeah, it is known that. Well done. Some of you got in there super quick. Which of these is an example of pathos? Brilliant, well done. What is ethos? Fantastic, well done. Understanding emotions is pathos. Which of these examples provides credibility? Fabulous, yeah, so a statistic, something that is provable. Logos is related to emotions or feelings, true or false? Fabulous, yeah, so it's pathos that's related to that. So think empathy, sympathy. What is jargon? Something that I haven't really used today, actually. Fabulous, yeah, so a group of words derived from a different language. Depending on the language, they have different names. If I recommend a Body Shop product to you and I have previously used said product, am I biased? Lovely, well done. You guys are flying through this now. I love Lush products. They are brilliant for skincare. What am I alluding to? What is the illusion? Fabulous, yeah. Which text would you be most likely to see a large amount of polysyllabic words? So I haven't used that many today, I don't think. Not as much as I might do with a broadsheet. Fabulous, are we at the end? Nope, one more. How should you start the main body of your letter writing? Fabulous, wow, you're all really quick there, well done. How have we done? Fabulous, we've got 3 of you on 10 out of 10, that is so great. I'm super chuffed. Really impressed, guys, really pleased, well done. Worked super hard today. Right. So how are we doing for time? So we've got a couple of minutes. If you guys have any questions that you want to throw my way, please do. Or if you've got any questions for Bola that are MyTutor related, then do. What I thought I would quickly show you. So this is a really lovely man called Anthony, who has a blog. And has a blog on transforming, well, a blog piece on a paper 2 question 5. And I've sort of built on some of the ideas that he's got in there. So there's a load of resources, so sort of some planning devices for you. He is the person that I stole the bubble thing from. He's absolutely brilliant. So there's loads of ideas for you here, and some examples of ethos, logos and pathos within a particular writing thing, particular task. They're all related, and then there's a really, really great model in there, and I think you can get all of these resources for free. And it's mainly for teachers, but for this, I think there's some stuff that is really helpful for you guys because there's so much structuring going on. So I think, I might be wrong, but I think you can get all of those resources via his Google. There's a Google Drive that is public where all of these resources on his site are. If not, I'm sure they are available on a Google Drive somewhere because he's that sort of man who would have a Google Drive for resources. But have a look over it. There's some, so this is the model here, which is annotated really nicely. So that's a really good blog article. He is a head of department for English. He is a teacher, so he mainly writes ideas for teachers. But there might be there are a few gems in there which I think you guys would find helpful. So his name is Anthony Cockrell. So if you type in Anthony Cockrell into Google, then his blog should come up. It's quite an unusual name. Right, so let's double check in terms of questions. I don't think we've got any more questions. I will give you sort of 30 seconds, a minute to send any more over. So next week we are going to be doing poppies from the Power and Conflict bundle. So if you're not doing AQA or you're doing love and relationships instead, still come. You can still get more. You will get things out of it. Learning how to annotate and analyse a poem. All of that's applicable to any sort of poetry. So please do come along, and it's a really lovely poem. Right. Okay, so I think we will round it off there. Bola, have I missed anything? Is there anything you want to say?
No, nothing that comes to mind. As all of you already know, you can find out a bit more about one-on-one tuition on our site. You can also find out a bit more about smaller group tuition, which are just even smaller sessions like this with about 6 students in them. Yeah, no, that's it. So just go on our site if you want to find out a bit more about those 2 things. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, so they're both really great opportunities. So go have a look. There's absolutely masses of tutors out there, and I'm sure they would be happy to have you. Right. I should see you all on Wednesday. I can't believe it's July already. I'll see you all next week. Look after yourselves. Make sure you have fun and do a little bit of work as well. But have a lovely week, guys, and I'll see you next week. Stay safe. Bye.